got to make sure that you keep up every day in every way with what they're doing online. And the reason you have to do that is there's child predators out here seeking out your children to groom them and ultimately to sexually batter them. Well, I'm going to show you a picture of a guy you're just not going to believe what they're doing. This is a child predator. And the reason you have to do that, his name's Jonathan Pandora. Your children. That's right, he's 23 years of age. He's a manager for Burger King down in Miami. So how did he end up in the North Lakeland area on Tuesday afternoon? Well, I can tell you for about 6 weeks he has been grooming a child that was 10 years old, a little girl. Did you hear me? She's 10. Not only is she 10, she just turned 10 in January. So he started grooming this child just barely after she was 10 years of age. And their game, he's a game player, as you can see, and he likes costume play. His game was a dominant, submissive sexual relationship with this child. So for 6 weeks he groomed her and he told her what he wanted to do. And on Tuesday, he arrived in Lakeland. He made arrangements to pick this 10-year-old child up, this little girl, at the end of the street from where she lived. And then he took her to the Motel 6 at the intersection of Griffin Road and US 98, where he had already previously arrived, and he had games and gaming stations for them to play. Well, the guardian came home and discovered this child missing and immediately called the sheriff's office. I can't begin to tell you how proud I was of our patrol response. From the time we engaged the call to the time we located the child was 35 minutes. That is unbelievable, just totally remarkable. So our deputies that arrived immediately saw a note on the bed where she said, "I'm going to be with a female friend. I'll be gone for 2 or 3 days. I'm safe. I want to help her out. I'll see you soon." And from there they went to her devices. And from the devices, they determined that, oh my gosh, she's being groomed by a sexual predator. And they were able to determine, well, let's see, they're probably in a motel based on the information we can gather real quickly. And our deputies all ran to the different hotels and found his vehicle in the parking lot. They immediately went to the office and said, we got to know where this guy is, and they told the room number. Our deputies knocked on the door. He opened the door wearing his underwear. We went into the room, and guess what? We found this child hiding in the bathroom wearing this dog collar. This child was wearing this dog collar. She was in a t-shirt and her underwear as well. Not only was she wearing that dog collar, she had this lanyard with this pacifier around her neck. You see, she was directed. He was the dominant, she was the submissive, and he was with his little girl. This is one of the most sick things you can ever imagine. And our deputies got there within 35 minutes, and still it was too late. He had sexually battered this child. But the positive side, if there is one, many times these children end up dead at the end of this play period. Our deputy saved her life, in my estimation, that day. and we certainly saved her from any further sexual abuse by getting there as rapidly as we did. So we interviewed this monster, and he confessed. You know what his defense was? Well, I thought she was 14 or 15. Are you kidding me? Oh, if you thought she was 14 or 15, why was your password into your computer her date of birth? Which clearly shows that she's 10 years of age. We have the victim in counseling today. I can't tell the parents that watch this enough, and you'll hear me say it over and over. You must know what electronic devices your children are on. You must monitor all of their activity, because there's monsters like this. And he drove from Miami up to attack her. She was his toy. He was the dominant. She was the submissive. He spent 6 weeks, and she was to do what he told her to do. So it doesn't get any worse than that. We charged him with kidnapping, which is a life felony, sexual battery by a suspect over 18 on a child under 12, which is a capital felony. We charge him with traveling to meet a minor, which is a second-degree felony. So far, we've charged him with 5 counts of possession of child pornography. That's a felony of the 3rd degree. If he has 10 or more counts, it goes there. They all go to a felony of the 2nd degree. And by the way, we've not completed the investigation of his electronic devices. That's still underway. We anticipate all of those charges to go to F2s. We charged him with 3 counts of directing the sexual performance of a child, because you see, he directed in his dominant role for her to do sexual things and send those pictures to him, for which he had on his devices. And we charged him with 2 counts of using a computer to seduce a child. Now, let me tell you what was shocking to us. When we told this horrible creature what he was charged with, he says, yeah, after we get this cleared up at the jail, can you give me a ride back to my car? It's like, dude, you're never going to need a car again. You're not going to need a driver's license, because you're going to go to state prison for the rest of your life. Do you know why? Because the Supreme Court ruled many years ago that on a capital case, we can't put you to death for this like we could at one time. He has no idea the gravity of this situation. It's all just child's play to him. Well, I can promise you this. The community should be outraged, and I'm sure they are. Our detectives were outraged. Our deputies that busted into that room to save that child, and I've left details out that we can't share with you, or we wouldn't publicly, that we saw there, that was even more outrageous than a 10-year-old child wearing a dog collar around her neck. So at the end of the day, the case is under investigation. But make no mistake about it. Let me underscore this. There are people on this computer and these different chat rooms and these different children's chat rooms and these different game rooms looking for your child to groom them, convince them this is okay, and engage them in the same conduct, and possibly, as we see often, at the end of the game plan, murder them. So that's that. Well, if that's not enough, we need your help today. We need your help Come on up, Scott. Do we have the picture of the van? It's over here. Come on up, Michelle. This is Michelle Newsom, a dear friend of mine. She's retired from the Lakeland Police Department after 24 years of wonderful service. She's now a mental health counselor, and we've worked with her a lot on our undercover operations where we're trying to rescue victims of human trafficking. Well, yesterday, she and her current husband, who is a retired homicide detective and police officer from Lakeland and a wonderful man, were also the victims of a crime. Well, it wasn't just any crime. These guys, when they broke in 3 houses yesterday, 1 of 3, took this urn with her husband's ashes, who was also a retired law enforcement officer from the city of Lakeland, a wonderful officer who passed away from cancer not so very long ago. Buddy Newsom was a buddy of mine. I knew Buddy long before we were ever in law enforcement, because we grew up in the same Cumbie settlement area of Lakeland. And he was a great man, and he was a great police officer and a great husband and a Christian man. But I wanted Michelle to come here and speak with you firsthand and let you know how she felt. And then we've got to have help finding these folks. They committed 3 daytime burglaries yesterday. And they broke into a house off of Shepherd Road, one just south of Scott Lake, and we're not giving Michelle's address because she's a retired police officer, but off of Highway 98 South in the North Bartow, South Lakeland area, in a very nice neighborhood. They were going to upscale houses and upscale communities, and they took something that was far more personal than ransacking a house and taking money and goods. But Michelle, come right over here.
Thank you for being here today. Obviously, it's emotional. When you come home and find your house has been broken into, that's one thing. And material possessions are another. You can replace those. But when you have lived with your late husband's ashes, who I truly, dearly loved, beside my bed since his passing, and then I go and I open this box as they've gone through my entire house, and I find that this urn is gone and he is gone. They have stolen something that cannot be replaced. And I want my husband back. You know, just as they said, these 3 houses have been broken into, and that's your safe haven. You know, when you go home, that's your safe haven. That's your comfort. That's where you're safe. You're away from the world, and that's your peace. But when you come home and you find that the windows are shattered and your stuff is thrown away and out and taken, and like I said, many of those possessions can be replaced, but he cannot be replaced. So I'm asking and pleading for the help that this van, these people, if we can just find them so that I can get my husband back. I just want my husband back.
Show them the ID.
Fortunately, there were other things that they could have taken and they didn't, so I praise God for that. But, you know, I have a picture of Buddy and his police ID and his badge, his retirement badge from the Lakeland Police Department. And obviously these things I treasure. And so anybody that knows anything about this white van and about these people that are breaking into these homes, if you could please contact the Sheriff's Department, the detective, Sheriff Judd, anybody, so please help to return Buddy to me.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, we've got a full court press on to find out and identify these folks, but the power of the community is much more powerful than we are. And if you will make a concerted effort to say, well, I've seen that vehicle, or I've seen those people, or look for them or pay attention. This string of burglaries was all in the South Lakeland area, and we know they're breaking in to steal for money. And probably when they saw this urn, that they thought, hey,
This is a
that's
Labrador Retriever.
brass and
This is a Golden Retriever.
we can scrap
Maybe
it,
seems
or
similar,
it's
but when you take a
gold.
closer look, the details tell a different
Our
story.
thoughts are
These dogs
they didn't know that they took
digest
such a
and process energy
precious,
differently.
prized possession.
The Royal Canin
They thought they were
obsessed
just
over these details.
garden variety
So we
patch
developed over
thieves,
200
but they're
specific
much more than
formulas
that
for
to
cats
us.
and dogs, because precise
And they're
nutrition
carrying around a
transforms
retired police officer that
magnificent animal.
stood in the
Royal
gap
Canin,
between good and
incredible
evil and
in
protected
every
people
detail.
of the citizens of Lakeland and the visitors and the wonderful people of Lakeland for years and years and years. And we want him back.
In the First Baptist Church.
We want him back. We want the
Sutherland
case solved, and we
Springs,
know the
Texas,
community can
killing
do that
26
for us.
people during the
Are
Sunday
there any
morning
questions
church
about
service.
either of the cases? Yes, sir.
The Fix Nix bill will fix holes in the background check system that's utilized when
We
firearms
have him
are
under
purchased by
investigation
individuals in
now,
the United
as you
States.
well know. We just
Even if
made
Fix
the
Nix were
arrest,
just to save one life,
and we
would
will
be
go
reason enough to
backward
enact it.
and do
But I
a
think it will save
chronology
many,
on his
many,
life
many
just
lives.
as soon as we wrap up this piece of the investigation. We do know that he lived with his mother and his grandmother, that he was a manager at Burger King, and that he gave us a full confession.
You said they met on a chat room?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Was she using a computer unsupervised, or did she have her own cell phone?
I think she had access to both. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
If anyone, Michelle has given permission to be able to take a picture of Buddy and his badge if you guys want to do that.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Fox 10 and News Now stream. We are going to take you out to Sutherland Springs, Texas, where Senator Cornyn is speaking right now with shooting victims there from that massacre at the church in Sutherland Springs. Let's listen in.
that many of us had that terrible, in the week following that terrible shooting, that some good might come out of this tragedy. I know Pastor Pomeroy, he prayed for some good to come out of this tragedy. And I think with this legislation now being signed into law by President Trump, some good has come out of this terrible tragedy. Something we wish had been avoided entirely, but that's not within our power. But what is within our power is to take reasonable, necessary steps to make sure that criminals can't acquire firearms by lying at the point of purchase. And that's what this legislation is designed to do. I think the next speaker is going to be from DPS, Freeman Martin, and I apologize for knocking people's. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator, for inviting us to be here today. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to be here today, Senator. None of us will ever forget that Sunday morning when this community was struck by an unthinkable tragedy. While it's been nearly 5 months since that day, the immense loss felt by the many victims, their families, and all the Sutherland Springs community is still very real. But so is the incredible strength, unity, and faith of this community. You've all shown such amazing grace as you continue to move forward. It's also touching to see the unwavering support for this community. And on behalf of DPS, I want you to know that our thoughts and prayers remain with you for continued comfort, strength, and hope. Senator, we want to thank you for your leadership. You've been a long supporter of law enforcement, and your efforts are clear to protect and serve Texas. And the work you've done in the wake of this tragedy at the Sutherland Springs First Baptist Church are admirable and valuable. It demonstrates your commitment to keeping Texans safe. We want to commend you for this legislation you've championed, and thank you for your dedication as your bill has now become law. This new law and any efforts to bolster safety in our communities is a measure worthy of great praise. I'm also in possession of several letters, 2 of which are from law enforcement agencies, one from the Major City Chiefs Association and the other one the National Association of Police Organizations, who support this legislation. So again, thank you for your leadership and your support. I want to close by thanking the many law enforcement agencies and first responders that responded and assembled here on November 5th and continuously worked around the clock in the many days thereafter. Your efforts helped save lives, gather facts and evidence during this investigation, and help bring some comfort to the families of the residents of Sutherland Springs. So thank you to the Wilson County Sheriff, Joe Tackett, and his team. Thank you to the FBI, the ATF, the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Department, the Texas Rangers, DPS troopers and special agents, and many, many others. It was an honor to work alongside as we came together to support this remarkable community, and this community will remain in a special place in our hearts for many, many years to come. So thank you.
Let's see, Judge.
Now, sir. Hello, I'm Dickie Jackson, the Wilson County Judge. Wilson County is healing. Sutherland Springs is healing. And we would like to thank Senator Cornyn for the work and the diligence he exhibited in getting this legislation passed, that the information will be out there where a tragedy like this that happened here may never happen again. Again, thank you, Senator.
I'm Joe Tackett, Wilson County Sheriff. I thank everyone for being here today, and I thank the Senator for his efforts in getting this legislation passed. Wilson County is here for Sutherland Springs, as Sutherland Springs is part of our county. I hope that we never ever have to hear of something like this happening again, and I think this legislation will help us a lot, being able to get things reported to the right agencies so that people can't go out and purchase these weapons if they have problems. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to all you that have come out today. Thank you for Senator Cornyn, that has been a tireless defendant of our Second Amendment rights. And thank you for this bill that helps protect this community. And I want everybody to know this community is a slice of what America should be and a slice of what America used to be.
Amen.
And there's no better place to live than right here in Sutherland Springs. And I want to thank law enforcement and everybody else. And I want to thank our God most of all for taking something that was so evil and turning it around.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
I also want to recognize the FBI representatives who are here today. Thank you for being here. The FBI is the premier law enforcement investigation agency in the world, and under the new director, Chris Wray, I think is really doing outstanding work with the new leadership that has been installed there. And there's no better evidence of that than the work they did recently in Austin, stopping the bomber there. At one point, I talked to the police chief, who said there were 500 federal agents on the ground and in Austin. So thank you on behalf of all of us, the FBI, for their great work.
Amen.
I'm happy to answer some questions. If you have questions for some of the folks here with me, please say so, and I'll move aside.
Senator, specifically, you said that this is not something symbolic. How does this piece of legislation work, and how does it prevent what happened from happening again?
Well, let's assume for a moment that Mr. Kelly, the gunman here, had gone to purchase his guns at Academy, and he had filled out the background check and asked, have you ever been dishonorably discharged from the military? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Have you ever been institutionalized for mental illness? That he had lied, as he did on each of those questions. If the information had been appropriately uploaded by the Air Force into the federal criminal background check system, it would have shown at the point of purchase that he was lying, and he would have been denied that purchase by the store. And so that's the way the system is supposed to work. But the FBI that maintains the National Criminal Instant Background Check System they can only do as good as the information that's uploaded in it. And what we found out here was that there was a huge gap in terms of the compliance with the requirements of the law by the federal government. So what we've done is we've provided some additional incentives and accountability for the federal government when it comes to uploading this information. Now, when it comes to the states, the federal government can't force the states to do it, but we can make it easier to do it, and we can provide some financial assistance to help encourage them to do it. Because we saw, for example, at Virginia Tech a few years ago, there was a young man who had been adjudicated mentally ill by the state of Virginia, but that information had never been uploaded into the background check system, and he committed a terrible, horrific act there on the campus at Virginia Tech. So this is a real problem, and I like to think that this is a solution, not a complete solution. Each one of these incidents are a little different in their own way, but I believe that it's true that if this had been in law and been enforced, that this tragedy might have been averted.
Senator, as you know, there have been loud calls for additional gun regulations, banning AR-15s, raising the age to buy a firearm to 21. Do you anticipate any of these passing Congress?
Well, Mr. Williford today, and he is one of the heroes of this terrible tragedy, who got his AR-15 out of his gun safe after he heard shots here, ran barefoot a block away, and he stopped the shooter from killing more people. So it's not the gun itself, it's the person that's using it that I think we need to be focusing our attention on. But he raised the whole issue, what if somebody does lie on the background check system and is prevented from purchasing a firearm? Is that information ever reported to law enforcement? Under current law, it is not. And what we need to do is, I think, perhaps pass an additional law that makes that a criminal offense, to lie and then attempt to buy. We also know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in treating people with mental illness, that according to the Secret Service, their threat assessment center, about 64% of people involved in these mass shootings have symptoms of mental illness. And as we saw at Parkland and elsewhere, where there were multiple failures of the law enforcement and the mental health treatment facilities, this is more complicated and each one is a little bit different, but mental health is a common component, it seems like, of so many. Finally, let me just say, to answer your question, the President has ordered the Department of Justice to implement new regulations to regulate bump stocks, which, as you remember, in Las Vegas, 58 people were killed and 851 people were injured in a shooting that occurred because somebody used a bump stock to turn a semi-automatic gun into essentially an automatic weapon, which would otherwise be illegal. So there are some concrete steps that have been taken. I think we need to continue the conversation to see where and how we might do more, including improving school safety and providing best practices for schools to make sure that they aren't a soft target like we saw at Parkland.
Pastor, is there a chance that we could ask you a couple questions?
Yep.
Sure. Come on down. No, it's difficult. Sorry about that.
No worries.
We heard several people say that the healing continues. Does this help?
Sure. Every day is a day down that pathway of healing, and the more we can see God being glorified and good coming from that helps to all healing. So every step, whether it be our new church facility going up to a bill that's passed to make sure that this doesn't happen elsewhere, every little bit will help those heal that knows there's something good coming from the loss of lives and the loss of lifestyle of those who are still survivors. Every little bit helps to push them down that road. So I would say absolutely.
There are people who are outside of Texas, outside of the Southeast, that don't understand how this community can continue on after such a horrific event. Address that for those folks that don't understand this type of community and this type of congregation. How do you continue on?
Well, one of the things Stephen already touched upon just a little bit earlier, we live in a community that we may have different ideologies and different aspects on how this or that should go, But where the rubber meets the road, when it comes to one another, we are like one large family. We've been tied together through unity of the community, and many of us through the grace of God. Many folks in this area go to this church or the church down the road, or it doesn't matter denomination right now. When there's a tragedy such as this, it's God who's lifted up and God who joins us all together. And how we continue forward, I think, is putting our faith and our hope not in man. I thank God for the law that this man has produced, but it was God who gave him the wherewithal to be able to produce this law and to get it to be passed. So we put our faith and our hope not in each other as much as in God, and God's who brings us through as a family down both the road of healing, the road of unity, and just the road of growth, I think.
Can you speak about today, Good Friday, and this Easter weekend? That's special for you all as well, to be gathering at this moment. And we weren't inside the meeting. We don't know if you mentioned that or if you had a special moment for that as well. What would that be like here this weekend?
Well, you know, as I've shared earlier in the week at another press conference, all this was choreographed by God to happen on this Passion Week. And I believe that this is a sign, again, Easter, we're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ, a new beginning, a new life, a new opportunity for all those who believe in Him and His salvation. This is another step in the salvation, in the resurrection, if you will, of the church and the community. We are continuing on. We have been reborn. We are continuing to grow. And each step, again, as I said, such as this, can be celebrated on Resurrection Week. I think that's one reason why God choreographed this to happen as it did, so that we can all see that He's still on the throne. I have a friend who says that He's large and in charge, and we don't need to forget that.
Pastor, I noticed you're open carrying today. I was wondering if this is something that has come out of the tragedy that befell your church, or is this something that you would practice?
Sorry. No, I've always been a proponent of carrying. I've had my concealed license long before this. I believe this part of the country, at least, is a culture of being able to protect ourselves. I put a lot of emphasis and trust in our law enforcement, and I praise the Lord for them and the great job that they do. However, sometimes they can't be where they need to be as quickly as you can learn to defend yourself. Now, I would say it's not for everyone. It's for those who feel as though they can be trained and do have the restraint not to use it, but to only in dire situations. So no, it wasn't because of this. It's just it may have made me a little more adamant. However, it was a decision I made long ago. In my mind, God's called some of us to run towards the fight, not away from it. In Nehemiah, there's a phrase that says, I will pray unto the Lord and then set a guard at the door to guard against our enemies. And I feel as though that's where some of us have been placed.
A lot of people say that a congregation is basically like a second family. Can you speak on how your family is doing now that it's been a couple of months since this devastating tragedy?
My family as a congregation?
Yes.
We have come together as a family, and we have grown as a family. And you are correct in saying it's like a second family. My wife very eloquently put it right after the tragedy that as special as Annabelle was to us, everyone that passed in there was just as special to someone else and to each other. So we are a family. We are still grieving as a family. Individually, we grieve differently and at different speeds and get down that pathway a little differently. But regardless of where we are on that pathway of grieving, we still come together. We're laughing together. We're crying together. In the meeting earlier, some were crying, some were laughing. We are a family, and as in any biological family as well, one is there to help the other get through the hard times, and that's what we're doing. Is that it?
Anybody else?
Senator, would you raise that flag with this group and the significance and the symbolism of that? Who's going to be
Well, I'm happy we were able to deliver that flag to the pastor and this church. It was flown over the Capitol the day that President Trump signed this bill into law. And so that's highly symbolic, I think, for a lot of reasons. This is a tight-knit community who drawn together by faith and family and love of country. And it just seemed like the appropriate thing to bring here today and to deliver to the pastor and this community. I think so. Thank you all for coming.
Amen.
Everything I can ever do.
Send me a link for the shoes.
We'll do that, sure.
My wife and I retook it, and so did my daughter and her husband.
All right, folks, next we're going to show you a news conference out of the Houston area where the attorney for a Houston pastor speaks about fraud charges against the pastor after allegations that he defrauded investors.
Yeah.
Did he make a false statement or knowingly made a false statement? At no time did he try to cheat anyone.
Yeah.
Indeed, every person that invested in these bonds that has asked for their money back has gotten their money back. Let me say that again. Every single person that has asked for their money back has gotten it back.
Right.
I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Caldwell for a few questions. We're not going to get in the weeds. We're not going to answer any detailed questions. We're simply here to tell you he is absolutely 100% not guilty. As I said earlier, I plan on beating this case like a rented mule. We're going to be. A few questions?
How do you know, Pastor, this co-conspirator that's named with you, this financial advisor, how do you know him?
You don't generally answer that.
I was introduced to him by a common colleague.
And were any of the investors church members?
Not to my life, no. This all started in Miami. In fact, when the process began, I did not even know any of the investors.
I don't know if the rest of you could hear Lynn's question or not, but he asked if any of the investors were church members, and if they were not.
So, since once the process began, I met some of the investors, but I did not bring any of them into the deal. And let me just say this, well, first of all, thank you very much for coming. Thank the press for coming. Thank Brother Caldwell for representing me. I know we've been involved in the community now for over 30 years, and added a lot of value, spiritually, economically, and otherwise. And everything was done decently and in order.
Amen.
And I fully expect the process to continue. These bonds are legitimate.
Yeah.
The process is legitimate. I fully maintain that the accusation is baseless, and I hold evidence in my hand to the authenticity and the legitimacy of the bonds.
Yeah.
If the bonds are legitimate,
right,
why did you have to return money?
Well, that's a very good question. It's been a process, and as is stated in agreement with the investors, if at any point in time you become impatient with the process and you want your money back, I'll pay your money back, which I did in full. Everyone to date who has requested his or her money back has received that.
And how much money is that?
Oh, we're not going to get into that, but a lot. Attorney may choose to answer that on my behalf.
Almost $1 million. He's returned almost $1 million.
And so why was the money returned? I want to be clear here. Was it because the promises made could not be met?
No, because the contract, if the investors were dissatisfied, they had the right to request their money back.
And why were they dissatisfied?
Because it was taking longer than they wanted, I suppose. But the point is, if they requested their money back, the money was returned.
Did anybody who was promised, according to the documents, a large return on their investment, did anybody get a return on their investment?
They have not yet.
So you're saying that the bonds are still, it's ongoing, they're still investing and they could get a return at some point?
He still believes that the bonds will pay off. Absolutely does. And again, he invested more of his money than anybody else did.
Pastor, what was the goal in the investment opportunity?
The goal is to make people money.
Is that a common thing you've done over the years?
And to invest it in the community. A lot of folk who are involved in this process are very interested in making substantial contributions to humanitarian projects. And in fact, Ms. Kidman is here to give this information. In fact, at the church, we celebrated this as the Ephesians 3:20 project, which would simply continue what we have done. So it's a substantial humanitarian.
A few more questions.
So you guys talked about this at the church as an Ephesians project, these bonds?
The benefits of it.
Again, he did not sell to church members. We talked about investing the benefits of the bonds once they paid off back into the church.
Based on money that you invested? And how much of your own money did you invest?
A lot.
Millions?
Millions?
Several $100,000.
Several $100,000. Did you get any return on your investment?
Not yet.
And do you expect to?
Yes, I do.
At what point?
Soon.
This has been 5 years. You have not seen a return.
Yes, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't happen.
All right.
Any more questions, guys? And we're going to wrap
What's
up.
the legal process now? From where you are, could you walk us through what
Sure.
you perceive are the next steps?
And despite my righteous indignation earlier, let me be clear. The Assistant United States Attorney in this case had the courtesy to call me yesterday. He doesn't have to call me and let me know that a client of mine has been indicted. He extended that professional courtesy. We will surrender Reverend Caldwell at some point in the next week to 10 days. He will post a bond in Shreveport, be released. Most of these cases of this complexity take about a year. Most of these cases of this complexity take about a year, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. We're in front of a very good district judge there in Shreveport. He's very smart, he's very fair, he's very good. It'll take about a year. There will be several court appearances, but ultimately I do expect this case to go to trial, and ultimately I expect to prevail.
Yourself in Shreveport?
Yes, sir.
In a week to 10 days?
Week to 10 days.
What impact will this have on the church? if any?
We'll find out on Sunday.
He has received tremendous support from church followers. Exhibit A.
That's right. Some of us are here.
Yeah, all right.
One more question.
I have to say, Pastor, I've been here a dozen years, interviewed you many times. The overall response to this has been complete shock and disbelief. Can you address the magnitude of the charges in light of the man that we have come to know?
Sure, I would simply say I share the shock and disbelief. And, we look forward to moving forward. And as Council has said, address the issue at hand. I do want to say this as well, that all along the process, I had, and this is very important, legal counsel. At no point was I just out here doing this.
All right. Amen.
Done, was
Amen.
done in accordance with their counsel. And unfortunately, we are where we are today.
Can you talk about the proof? I know you said you got proof. Can you talk a little about
we don't want to do that today.
I intend to try this case in the courtroom. You know that.
We haven't.
So we want to be clear here. You're saying these bonds are legitimate and worth something and will return investment.
What we are saying, Lynn, is that he absolutely believed these bonds are legitimate. He absolutely believed that. He would have never sold an investment opportunity in a bond that he didn't believe to be worthwhile.
And we have evidence.
No comment, no question, Dan. I just want to say we all in.
Thank you, Aaron.
All in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So was it somebody else you would say that was?
We're not here to speak about anybody but Pastor.
Pastor, what
All right.
comment do you have to the Houston community as far as their reaction on this note? As Lynn mentioned earlier, what response do you have to them?
I want to thank you once again for your prayers and for your support. Thank you for the widespread support that I've been getting over the last few days. And just as you were shocked and disappointed, I am shocked as well. And as we go forward, we will pray.
I've spent 35 years in this business. The process is bumpy. It is unfriendly. It's rough. It's expensive. And it's incredibly stressful. But I believe in the process. I believe the right thing will happen. And I certainly believe the right thing will happen in Reverend Kirby John's case, and we will prevail. We're done.
Were you misled by Mr. Smith?
We're not going there, Lynn. We're not here to talk about anything about the other co-defendant.
Do you feel as though just in over your head?
Obviously
the intentions were good, but was it just something that got out of hand?
We're not going to get into that. Okay, guys, I really do appreciate y'all coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Howard, how are you, Howard? Nice to see you. You all right? Good to see you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Fox 10 and News Now stream, part of fox10phoenix.com. We do appreciate everybody joining us here. Fox 10 Extra starting up in just a moment.
Are you going to have the border wall briefing?
And welcome, everybody, to News Now on this Friday as we take a live look at downtown Phoenix right now. It is just another beautiful day, and it's shaping up to be a great weekend as well. But before we get to that, we have a lot of top stories and headlines to get to you today here on News Now. Joining me, as always, Ron Hoon. I'm Mike Page. Welcome to News Now, everybody.
Yeah, no kidding. And we are looking forward to a beautiful Easter weekend here in the Valley of the Sun and really all across the state of Arizona, that's for sure, which is in contrast to some of the next apparently possibly heavy snow that they're going to be getting out on the East Coast.
They've been getting dumped on and dumped on and dumped on.
I know.
All spring.
Yes, right. Yeah. You know, and so you had some major league debuts yesterday that were not able to even happen in Cincinnati and in Detroit. It can be a long winter.
It really can. And just come to think of it, in about a couple of weeks there in Boston, they're going to be trying to have that Boston Marathon, but wow.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know how the people have been training for that during this winter when, I mean, they've just been getting nor'easter.
Yeah, you got to hop in the car and drive about to South Carolina, I think, if you want to get out of this up that way. But anyway, Mike, good to be here with you on a Friday, and yeah, you're right. There's lots to talk about. That's
there
for sure.
really is, and expecting any moment right now, we are expecting a border wall update from the Border Patrol. So we're expecting that could come at any moment right now, and this is all being, we know of this tweet that President Trump put out a couple of days ago. It says, great briefing this afternoon on the start of our southern border wall, and he shows some pictures there, and then some media outlets reporting, well, that's just not the case here, that these are older photos and not what's being done right now. So we're going to get a better idea of just how this wall is coming along.
Yeah, it's a he said, they said kind of situation. And so, let's actually listen to what the Border Patrol has to say. This is interesting because clearly, I think, Mike, this has been set up as a result of A, what the president had to say, and then B, the pushback that came from a number of media outlets. So Yeah, we're in standby mode. That literally could happen at any moment now.
Yeah, so when that does become available, of course, we'll bring that to you right here on News Now. But I do want to show just another amazing story, and I got to bring this up because of the Chicago Blackhawks here. Now, this, if you haven't heard about this one yet, this is a great story of, wow, what a save, though. This is an ordinary guy.
Perfect, yeah.
An ordinary guy that had to be the goalie after two of their goalies went down injured.
Sure, and not just an ordinary guy in that, I don't know, maybe he works like a construction job or a delivery job. He's an accountant. Some people might call him a pencil pusher.
Right.
They're probably not as many pencils anymore. But anyhow, yeah, so that's his main job. He's 36 years old. But I was not aware that the NHL has a program where, at least in some areas, where you got the backup to the backup to the backup. And so your first goalie is hurt, your backup goalie is hurt. What would you do if both of them went down? Well, you'd look up at the crowd and you'd say, "Hey, buddy,
Johnny, you're in."
Yeah, you up there in the 32nd row. Come on down and suit up, and we got to have you play." I was not aware that program even existed, and for this guy to then jump into action, I guess he goes to these games thinking, what are the odds?
Shot, the very longest shot.
0.01%. I have no idea if he's attended 10 games in this role as the backup to the backup, or if last night was the first time, or if he's been doing it for years. But the bottom line is this. They asked him to come on into the game. He quickly suited up, and he had the star performance like he was a pro.
Right.
Yeah.
So definitely, that was a great view there. And what I didn't get, though, with a story like that, is how come they need an ordinary person there? Why can't, don't you think anybody else on that team that's already playing hockey would be suitable then to be the goalie? Because you don't see this in baseball. Where they start pulling people from the. If they run out of pitchers, then maybe a third baseman comes in.
Correct.
Maybe a second baseman, but you never see hey, Bill, we're going to need you. Get off the nacho.
Get off the nachos and get down onto the ice. Yeah. All right. So it is unique to hockey. That is for sure. I don't think, for example, as far as I know, I don't think there's somebody sitting up there in the cheap seats at a Cardinals game.
Yeah.
In case quarterback number 1, 2, and 3. Most teams will have 3.
Yes.
If all 3 of them go down. But wow, what an experience. And you know what? The guy got up this morning, I presume, got in his car, drove back into downtown, and worked his regular everyday job as an accountant.
Yeah, and that's a great story too. And it's like, hey, what did you do yesterday? Well, well, I was the fill-in.
Yeah,
I made it onto the game.
You got to believe it's the single biggest story in the entire Chicagoland area.
Right.
5 million people are talking about.
It's a dream come true, no doubt, for that individual there. Yeah. Well, here's another thing I want to bring up to you, Ron.
Okay.
Next week, Congress comes back.
Yep.
What do you think is going to be some of their main objectives to get done after this Easter break?
Oh, see, now that's a great question. Well, I think one of the questions we are going to maybe get an answer to, although with Congress it's hard to say, but let's face it, the March for Our Lives was a sort of a seminal event in our country in recent years, really historically speaking, in Washington, because they are saying that it was one of the largest, if not the largest, coordinated gathering both in D.C. and around the country for any group to protest anything. And, I grew up in the 60s, and I can remember when there was a big protest regarding the Vietnam War.
Sure. Yes.
And we know that there have been a number of large marches on Washington, too. But will there be some type of vote on additional action coming out of the March for Our Lives? We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And a little bit later here on News Now, we do want to bring you out to Sutherland Springs, Texas, the site of that horrible massacre that happened at that Baptist church.
Right.
and we're going to hear from Senator Cornyn as well as some victims from that shooting, as he was able to pass some legislation on some background checks.
Yeah. Well, so far when I was watching that feed with you, we heard from the senator, and there's a specific reason that he's there, because he's been pushing some legislation that apparently is going to actually get into the works now, that he's talking about will there be more, what else needs to be done, and then just the emotional aspect of people sharing their thoughts of the worst day of their lives. So, you know, you'll have all of that, I believe, coming up a little bit later this morning.
Yes, we will. And I'm being told that any moment now on our feeds here, they're going to give us the Border Patrol update on the construction wall. So as soon as we see that pop up, I'll bring that to you right here on News Now. But yeah, a lot always going on, and just because it's almost going into this holiday still, we have a lot going on here.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We'll continue to monitor the feeds here for you, and then also a little bit later here on News Now, we're going to show you that great SpaceX launch in case you didn't get to see it there. Those are always amazing.
It's like we have dueling launches between us and the Russians today.
Oh, wow.
You know, the Russians released some video after Putin claimed that they had a new type of missile that can kind of go up and then sort of float along the terrain and be not detectable to traditional anti-ballistic missile systems. We didn't see the whole thing, but we did see the launch.
Yeah, we did see the launch there. All right, looks like we do have the feed there from the Border Patrol on this construction for the border wall update. Let's go to that right now. Thanks so much, Ron. All right.
Features or something that you will put into place or that informed you in one way or another. And then are you able to talk about the restriction on building and Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge in the omnibus as well?
So on the as it relates to the attributes, we learned about what it takes to breach some of that structure. Each of those prototypes has a mock-up that's similar in design, and they were cut on and beat on and climbed on and dug into. And so we learned how long it takes to breach some of that structure and some of those materials. Those will all help us inform a new design standard. And so based on terrain, based on constructability, we'll use those attributes where we think they make the most sense. But there are restrictions in this appropriation. And then you talked about Santa Ana, it's the same thing. Congress decided that our priorities weren't theirs, and they moved it elsewhere.
Todd Gilman, Dallas Morning News. Can you say at this point so you're saying 100 new miles or replacement miles, we can argue about those semantics, but
it's a mix. All of the construction will be a new feature in that part of the border of 100 miles.
What is the total mileage that you want along the border?
Well, we've looked at every mile that's out there, so that it's several hundred miles. It's basically. I think the top 10 projects give us double what's out there now, which is 654 miles. And that's also a combination. Some of that will be replacing the dilapidated fencing, adding new capabilities in replacing that, and then adding new wall as well.
Let me ask you a slightly different way. When all of the wall or fence building is completed that you would like to have happen, how much of the border will have wall or fence along it?
Approximately 1,400 miles? 1,000? About 1,000 miles.
And right now, 654.
Is what there's current structure at 654 miles, yes.
So the White House had asked throughout this process for $25 billion. Is that the correct sum to get this done? Or is there a different cost figure that you can put on it?
That would depend on how we got the money, right? We got an appropriation of we got every dollar we asked for, but it's configured in a kind of a different way. So it depends on how that funding becomes available. $25 billion would make a big difference to those projects, yes.
Would it complete all 1,000 miles that you're talking about?
I believe it would.
Have you been in discussions at all with the Defense Department? Would you welcome, a redirection of appropriations your way for more construction?
As an operator, we want more capability. We've done many things with the Department of Defense over my career. They're great partners with us, and so from the operations perspective, where we can add capability, regardless of where it comes from, we'd be happy to do that.
Touched on this in your opening statement, but can you respond to Congress
declining to fund the hiring surge and kind of questioning the underlying need for that?
CBP is hiring. I want everybody to know that. I would like all your viewers to know that. If you go to the cbp.gov, the careers page, lots of opportunity in this organization. We're going to continue to try and meet our hiring goals and what the president set out for us as a requirement in the executive order. Congress did give us important resources in recruitment, retention, and relocation funding. So we're happy about that, and then we're going to do everything we can to fulfill the mandate for hiring.
I'm sorry, just to follow up on my line of questioning, has the president signed off on the final goal being about 1,000 miles of border being fenced or walled?
I'm not sure he's seen the entire package. I think there have been several updates I've not been involved with, but I'm not sure. That was, when you look at the immigration priorities that he put out in the framework, the $25 billion was the ask that the administration was going for. That's correct.
But that doesn't necessarily say how much mileage of construction there would be.
I just don't know. I can't speak for him, but that will make a major difference with an enduring capability for border security across the southwest border.
Can you release a map of where all these barriers would be?
I think we do have something that we're using publicly, and if we do, I'll happy to send it around.
Chief, can I follow up on that? Can you give right now that 300 or 654 miles is, I think, 354 of pedestrian and 300 of vehicle. Do you know what of the 1,000, do you know what that breakdown would be at the end of that? Or, whatever you have, pedestrian versus or levee wall, if you have that in there as well?
I'm not sure we have in the current request or the larger $25 billion. I don't think we're asking for any more vehicle barrier. I think it's all pedestrian wall.
Sorry, Chief. The Senator raised that in New Mexico. That's vehicle barrier, which should turn into pedestrian barriers, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's 20 miles. That's the one that's due to start early April.
He was made the appearance when the president made the appearance after signing the omnibus bill to talk about it. He said, "quote We're not going to be," or literally on Monday, he said, "we're not only going to be doing new wall, but also fixing existing walls," suggesting that something new was happening. Was supposed to start this Monday. Do you know what he was talking about?
The Calexico project started this week, or actually started last week.
February 21st.
The planning and such. I'm not exactly sure how long we've been constructing, but during this week, there's construction underway in Calexico.
We have time for one more question.
Can I come back on the question of prototypes? And can you explain to us what your goal is with the prototypes? Will you choose one, and then that will be the way the entire rest of the wall is built? Or are you saying you'll take features from each one and perhaps have a mix?
The latter. So that we've learned a lot from the prototyping process. We're grateful to have the opportunity to test some of the things that industry brought to us. It was important for the president to see that and learn what we have. We'll be able to show him what we learned. And those attributes in some of those prototypes will be part of the new design standard.
Sir, if I could, of the approximately 100 miles that you're talking about, how many are new to this administration? How many were already being planned or considered in previous administration?
I don't think any of it was executable in the previous administration. We didn't have the funding for it or the authorization.
And if I might follow up on that, and what about from the 2006 Border Secure Fence Act during the Bush administration? Was any done then?
Well, the wall that's out there now was done under Secure Fence Act, and some of the replacements will obviously will replace that, some of the landing mat that was there prior.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. We would be happy to do after action on this if you have any questions for us.
All right, so we were just getting an update there from the Border Patrol on the very latest there with the border wall, as we saw President Trump tweeting out a couple of days ago about how it is already started there. So we are going to continue to provide you with the very latest details right here on News Now when they do become more available. More News Now coming up next, everyone. All right, everybody, welcome back here to News Now on this Friday. Here we're taking a live look at the I-17 northbound by Pioneer. You are watching News Now right now. Happy Friday, everybody, as we continue on with News Now, providing you with the very latest news and updates from around the country and right here in Arizona. Our next top story here of the day, we're going to let you know a little bit more about the latest in the U.S. and Russia tensions. Take a look at this.
Moscow declaring dozens of American diplomats in Russia as persona non grata, kicking them out just days after the U.S. told Russian diplomats to pack up.
Russia clearly is not interested in having good relations with other countries, and that is evident by the actions that they have taken.
Staffers at the American consulate in St. Petersburg have been ordered to clear out by Saturday. In total, 60 Americans kicked out, 58 employees at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, and 2 more at the consulate in Yekaterinburg. They have until April 5th to leave. The White House reacting with a statement, the press secretary saying in part, Russia's action today to expel American diplomats marks a further deterioration in the United States-Russia relationship. And Russia's response was not unanticipated, and the United States will deal with it. This comes after the Trump administration told 60 Russians to get out on Monday, closing Russia's consulate in Seattle. Russia has been accused of using a nerve agent on a former spy and British citizen on UK soil, but the Kremlin has denied any wrongdoing.
They don't need to act like a victim. Russia should not be acting like a victim. The only victims in this situation are the 2 victims in the hospital in the UK right now.
But Russia's backlash is not limited to the U.S. In all, 150 diplomats from 24 countries have been told to pack up. Russian state media says the U.S. views its St. Petersburg consulate as the most prestigious. That consulate also garnered the most votes in a Twitter poll from the Russian embassy here in D.C., asking which American office Russia should close. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Our next story, we're going to take you out to Florida, where there is a dangerous trend going on now for teenagers. Take a look at this.
Have you heard of the term juuling?
No, I haven't.
Most parents haven't heard of it, and from the looks of it would probably think it was harmless. But school districts are quickly catching on to the new trend called juuling.
It's very easy for our parents to not understand what the students are doing, but it's probably the latest problem that we have.
That's why the Seminole County School District sent out this email to parents warning them to be on the lookout for the devices known as Juuls, tricking parents and teachers into thinking the vaping tool is really a technology tool.
We also have an obligation to train to the students understand the dangers of not only juuling but vaping and all the different things that can take place with that, because it's a trendy thing right now.
The discrete e-cigarettes have a small vape cloud that dissipates quickly and can be charged through a computer or USB port. They come in different flavors like mango and cucumber. Parents call it concerning.
I heard about vaping, and I know it's still, not good for health, and it's popular among teenagers, and I don't like that.
All right, so hopefully they do stop that there in Florida. All right, next here on the News Now, we're going to introduce you to a 70-year-old ski patrol employee. Take a look at this.
The views are breathtaking. These slopes at Snowshoe Mountain attract skiers and snowboarders from across the country. But people do get hurt here. And when that happens, ski patrollers answer the call for help, racing down the slopes with a sled.
It can be dangerous if you're not paying attention to what you're doing.
Jim Johansson is on the ski patrol team. He's in his 70s, and unlike most patrollers on skis, he's on a snowboard.
I get to do my riding on the slopes, and I get to help people too.
After 30 years in the Navy, Johansson says this is one of his favorite places to be. He started on ski patrol as a volunteer.
When I was volunteering, I was putting in 300 to 400 hours a season.
Johansson trains alongside the other guys and gals on the slopes every year, ready to respond to nearly any kind of call.
To be a ski patroller, you have to have OEC, which is outdoor emergency care.
There's no ambulances up here.
We carry everything right here.
Everything they need is packed in their jackets. It's a fun job with a serious mission. Do their best to get everyone home safe.
Our main thing is to make sure they're breathing, not bleeding, and alive.
Hey, that's awesome. That's awesome for that individual there. You gotta love that. Continues to go strong there at 70, working hard there to keep everybody safe on those slopes there. All right, well, we all know Sunday is Easter, so who do we send out to have some fun with children and some Easter eggs? Well, we send out our very own Corey McCloskey, who always has a good time on AZAM. Take a look at this.
I know.
Right there.
The floor is jammed with eggs. It is, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it's carpeted with eggs, and it's one of their most enjoyable events of the whole year. Peyton Diddlot is with us, and we've got some kids already waiting, already lined up out there, and this is a pretty nice array of options. Many egg hunts are kind of sparse.
Yeah.
You really got to search. You're up in trees, you're down rabbit holes and all. You're making it easy on these guys.
Yeah, filled about 4,000 eggs this year. Gets better every year. The kids seem to love it. We love getting it ready for them. So that's what we have going on today. But we also are open on Easter, so we'll have some fun things that day as well.
Oh, fun. Now, today's egg hunts, you've got them in, I think, 3 categories, right? And it's free? Kids can just come in?
Yeah, it's free. We also have one jumping area open if you're waiting, so that's free as well. We open to the public at 9, but this is completely good to go. Walk in, you're ready to get going.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to open this one here. I've got a good feeling about this. I'm usually pretty lucky with eggs. Oh, sweet tarts are one of my favorites. What are some of the other options that we've got in here?
We're giving away a couple passes, so we have free hours, some money off different hours. We're also going to be having buy one, bring a friend in, and then also tons of candy, obviously, for the kiddos.
Very good. And what are the age categories?
So we have 0 to 4, and then 8 to 10, and then 10 to 12. But those are kind of lenient. Say we have a 13-year-old with a little one. They can totally come in and help out. We have parents helping out. But yeah, it's great fun for everyone.
Excelente. Well, it's AZ Airtime, easy to find. I'm looking for kids who are pretty good at picking up eggs. Really? How'd you get in front of the barrier here?
I have no idea. I'm in front of here because I want to be world famous, because I know this is a camera. I'm not dumb anyway, and I want to be on the news. So can you please interview me?
Well, we'll see. Is your mom here? Did you drive yourself?
No, I did not drive.
Did you hitchhike?
I have no idea what that means.
Good. That's good.
My mom's the person that drove me here. She's the person looking after me right now.
Oh, really?
And this is my friend, Brinley.
Oh, Brinley seems a little more retiring. Come over here, Brinley. What's your friend's name?
Lauren O'Day. Lauren!
Hold on. Now, Brinley's talking now, Lauren. How would you describe Lauren to people who've never met her before?
Crazy.
Yes, we got that part.
Well,
oh boy. I'm giving you two about 6 more months together, and then Lauren will be going her own way. No, here you go. We're going to start you off, Brinley, with one of those. I don't think Lauren's going to have any trouble finding one herself. I know. Can you believe that just happened? That's one of life's hard lessons. No, don't you worry. All right, it's all happening at AZ Airtime. And we'll see how Lauren
She needs
does
her own
once-
segment, Corey.
Hold on.
We got to get that kid a segment here
She
on
needs
AZAM.
what?
She needs her own segment. We need like a recurring. She's a dynamo.
Oh, I know.
Wow, that kid definitely wanted all the attention right there, no doubt there. All right, more news now is coming up next. We're going to take you pretty soon out to Texas there, where we are going to get an update from Sutherland Springs, Texas there, the site there of that just horrible massacre that happened on a couple of months ago there. So we will get an update there from other officials there as well. More news now is coming up next, everybody.
Good point, Chris. Yep.
And welcome back, everybody, to News and Now. As we do now, take a live look at Dallas, Texas on this Friday. Hi, everybody. Mike Pace here, continuing on with News Now, giving you the top headlines and stories here of the day from around the country and right here in Arizona. We're going to keep you in Texas, where we hear from officials from Sutherland Springs, Texas, where just a little bit ago they had a news conference right outside of that Baptist church where it was the site of that horrible massacre. And we are learning that some new gun legislation has gone into effect after this horrible massacre to prevent something like this from happening again. This has to do with gun background checks, and we're going to hear from Texas Senator John Cornyn and other survivors there right now here on News Now.
Well, thanks, Pastor Pomeroy. I'm not sure how many of the media have attended a prayer service like that at one of these news conferences, so I think it's entirely appropriate. It was about 5 months ago that my wife and I came to a makeshift building. I guess it was a tent, really. Yeah. A week after the terrible events that occurred at this little Baptist church right here behind me. And it was an emotional experience, as you all remember. But as emotional as it was for us, you can imagine what it was like for the lives of these people who lost loved ones and who still carry the wounds from that day. 26 people lost their lives, and 20 more, their lives were forever changed. And as I was trying to grapple with the magnitude and really the evil that we saw that day, I asked myself, what can I do as one person to try to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again? And I know that after each of these shootings, whether it's at Parkland, Florida, or Las Vegas, or wherever, people demand that we do something. And the question I always have is, what is that something you want us to do? Sometimes it strikes me as symbolism, the something that people want us to do, but I was determined to make sure it was something that would actually save lives. And so as we learned more about the gunman that day, we learned that he slipped through the cracks of the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, which is designed to make sure that people who are felons, people who are mentally ill, people who have committed and been convicted of crimes of domestic violence, to make sure that they cannot legally acquire guns or possess guns, because under current law, they cannot. But if you can lie and get the gun because the background check system is broken and doesn't have the information in it, then you can get away with it. And we know that even just since this terrible event, because of what the Air Force and the Department of Defense have now done, there are 4,000 more records in the background check system than existed previously for people who were dishonorably discharged from the military. So this law fixed NICS, fixed the National Instant Criminal Background Check System that's maintained by the FBI, I believe will save lives. It's not just mere symbolism. And it really answers a prayer, I think, that that many of us had in the week following that terrible shooting, that some good might come out of this tragedy. I know Pastor Pomeroy, he prayed for some good to come out of this tragedy. And I think with this legislation now being signed into law by President Trump, some good has come out of this terrible tragedy. Something we wish had been avoided entirely, but that's not within our power. But what is within our power is to take reasonable, necessary steps to make sure that criminals can't acquire firearms by lying at the point of purchase. And that's what this legislation is designed to do. I think the next speaker is going to be from the DPS, Freeman Martin, and I apologize for knocking people's things down.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator, for inviting us to be here today. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us to be here today, Senator. None of us will ever forget that Sunday morning when this community was struck by unthinkable tragedy. While it's been nearly 5 months since that day, the immense loss felt by the many victims, their families, and all the Sutherland Springs community is still very real. But so is the incredible strength, unity, and faith of this community. You've all shown such amazing grace as you continue to move forward. It's also touching to see the unwavering support for this community. And on behalf of DPS, I want you to know that our thoughts and prayers remain with you for continued comfort, strength, and hope. Senator, we want to thank you for your leadership. You've been a long supporter of law enforcement, and your efforts are clear to protect and serve Texas. And the work you've done in the wake of this tragedy at the Sutherland Springs First Baptist Church are admirable and valuable. It demonstrates your commitment to keeping Texans safe. We want to commend you for this legislation you've championed, and thank you for your dedication as your bill has now become law. This new law and any efforts to bolster safety in our communities is a measure worthy of great praise. I'm also in possession of several letters, 2 of which are from law enforcement agencies, one from the Major City Chiefs Association and the other one the National Association of Police Organizations, who support this legislation. So again, thank you for your leadership and your support. I want to close by thanking the many law enforcement agencies and first responders that responded and assembled here on November 5th and continuously worked around the clock in the many days thereafter. Your efforts helped save lives, gather facts and evidence during this investigation, and help bring some comfort to the families of the residents of Sutherland Springs. So thank you to the Wilson County Sheriff, Joe Tackett, and his team. Thank you to the FBI, the ATF, the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Department, the Texas Rangers, DPS troopers and special agents, and many, many others. It was an honor to work alongside as we came together to support this remarkable community, and this community will remain in a special place in our hearts for many, many years to come. So thank you.
Let's see, Judge.
Hello, I'm Dickie Jackson, the Wilson County Judge. Wilson County is healing. Sutherland Springs is healing. And we would like to thank Senator Cornyn for the work and the diligence he exhibited in getting this legislation passed, that the information will be out there where a tragedy like this that happened here may never happen again. Again, thank you, Senator.
I'm Joe Tackett, Wilson County Sheriff. I thank everyone for being here today, and I thank the Senator for his efforts in getting this legislation passed. Wilson County is here for Sutherland Springs, as Sutherland Springs is part of our county. I hope that we never ever have to hear of something like this happening again, and I think this legislation will help us a lot, being able to get things reported to the right agencies so that people can't go out and purchase these weapons if they have problems. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to all you that have come out today. Thank you for Senator Cornyn that has been a tireless defendant of our Second Amendment rights. And thank you for this bill that helps protect this community. And I want everybody to know this community is a slice of what America should be and a slice of what America used to be.
Amen.
And there's no better place to live than right here in Sutherland Springs. And I want to thank law enforcement and everybody else. And I want to thank our God most of all for taking something that was so evil and turning it around.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
I also want to recognize the FBI representatives who are here today. Thank you for being here. The FBI is the premier law enforcement investigation agency in the world, and under the new director, Chris Wray, I think is really doing outstanding work with the new leadership that has been installed there. And there's no better evidence of that than the work they did recently in Austin, stopping the bomber there. At one point I talked to the police chief, who said there were 500 federal agents on the ground and in Austin. So thank you on behalf of all of us, the FBI, for their great work.
Amen.
I'm happy to answer some questions. If you have questions for some of the folks here with me, please say so, and I'll move aside.
Senator, specifically, you said that this is not something symbolic. How does this piece of legislation work, and how does it prevent what happened from happening again?
Well, let's assume for a moment that Mr. Kelly, the gunman here, had gone to purchase his guns at Academy, and he had filled out the background check and asked, have you ever been dishonorably discharged from the military? Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Have you ever been institutionalized for mental illness? That he had lied, as he did on each of those questions. If the information had been appropriately uploaded by the Air Force into the federal criminal background check system, it would have shown at the point of purchase that he was lying, and he would have been denied that purchase by the store. And so that's the way the system is supposed to work. But the FBI that maintains the National Criminal Instant Background Check System, they can only do as good as the information that's uploaded in it. And what we found out here was that there was a huge gap in terms of the compliance with the requirements of the law by the federal government. So what we've done is we've provided some additional incentives and accountability for the federal government when it comes to uploading this information. Now, when it comes to the states, the federal government can't force the states to do it, but we can make it easier to do it, and we can provide some financial assistance to help encourage them to do it. Because we saw, for example, at Virginia Tech a few years ago, there was a young man who had been adjudicated mentally ill by the state of Virginia, but that information had never been uploaded into the background check system, and he committed a terrible, horrific act there on the campus at Virginia Tech. So this is a real problem, and I like to think that this is a solution, not a complete solution. Each one of these incidents are a little different in their own way, but I believe that it's true that if this had been in law and been enforced, this tragedy might have been averted.
Senator, as you know, there have been loud calls for additional gun
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Power and telemetry are nominal.
And we had successful liftoff of the Falcon 9. As you saw, it's pitching downrange at the moment to continue its ascent into orbit. Going supersonic right about now. And it'll be going through max Q shortly.
Vehicle is supersonic.
So we're decreasing the engine thrust to minimize the pressures of max Q, which is the point at which the rocket is pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
And now that we're through that milestone, we'll be increasing the thrust of the engines in order to get to orbit. But while the atmosphere is still relatively thick, we can prevent it from exerting too much pressure on the fairing by throttling the engines a little bit.
All right, so you were taking a look at that, once again, amazing launch there in California of another SpaceX launch, and I'm now joined by our very own Troy Hayden, and these never get old, right?
No, ever. And especially, you know, it's a new era now because we're dealing with these private companies who are launching these satellites into space. And plus it's Elon Musk, the Tesla guy.
The Tesla guy.
He makes everything kind of cool. And yeah, just being able to see the video's gotten so much better in recent years to watch these. And you'll see in a second as they switch to go inside when the first stage separates. You got a beautiful camera inside, right next to the second stage. You can see the whole thing going. And I just think it's so interesting too to, you know, listen to what they're talking about. When they're talking about max Q. Things you don't think about is, you know, because we're not rocket scientists. No, we're far from it, actually. But, you know, when you're shooting something through space, and actually before it gets to space, here's that camera I was talking about. So
Look
there's
at
a separation right there. And there's that first stage falling away. You know, and just an aside here, as we're looking at this, you know, that first stage is able to go down and land on its own, which we've seen.
Yeah.
You know, landing just on a little landing pad. But they didn't do it today only because they're not going to reuse this one because they've got a new and improved first stage they're going to start using, so they're not saving this anymore. But when they go through that max Q, they hit a certain velocity and the atmosphere is pushing back.
Yeah,
you know?
right,
It's like a boat cutting through water, or what, you know, the wind out there because you're going so fast that it's actually exerting a ton of pressure on the rocket. And it can exert so much that you can actually have a structural failure of the rocket, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So that's why they throttle back.
Yeah.
They throttle back a little bit, slow it down, and then all of a sudden the atmosphere is getting thinner and thinner, and you can hit the gas again. There's a great shot. Oh, so that's when the the fairing peeled away. So when we saw the rocket sitting there on the pad, it had a kind of a bulbous top on it, and that was protecting the satellites it's going to go put in orbit. And so one of the things they were trying to do today, which they haven't been able to do yet, is actually catch that fairing, that cone.
Wow.
Because the parts are worth $6 million.
yeah, so you don't want to...
You just want to throw it away.
No, you just don't want to.
Yeah, you want to be able to reuse it. So Elon Musk said, look, if I had $6 million in cash strapped to a pallet and it was falling out of space, wouldn't you try to go get it?
Yeah, definitely.
He says, yeah, we would.
Definitely.
So they put a ship out to sea. It actually left yesterday out of Los Angeles, and it's called Mr. Steven. That's the name of it. I don't know what the backstory is on that. I'm sure it's something with Elon. You know, he's got.
He always has these different names there.
So what's on that ship is like a huge catcher's mitt. It's a net. So what they're going to try to do in the future is that fairing, that cone breaks in half like this, and then falls back to Earth. So when it falls back down to Earth in two different pieces, they actually have little thrusters on them and GPS tracking systems. Well, they'll be able to steer themselves down to the Mr. Steven ship, and they'll catch them because once the fairing goes into the ocean, it damages all the electronic parts inside that help steer it and all those other things. So it's really not usable again.
That's neat.
So in order for them to use it, they're going to have to catch it in that big catcher's mitt, and they were not successful with that today. There was some sort of a problem with.
There you go.
Something.
Yeah, something.
But they're working on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love this Elon Musk guy because I believe that he really is going to push it for Mars. Yeah. I mean, he could totally do it. It's just years in the making. I mean, it's just going to take some time, but I think this guy is going to do it then.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, he's got actually, probably some of the smartest people in the world working for him. They're doing things that we've never seen done before, like the first stage.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
or
coming
put
back.
up a whole Tesla up in space.
So, with the heavy rocket, which is the bigger rocket than this rocket, than the Falcon. But yeah, he's doing some amazing things. I mean, and we're not even talking about his cars. He's had some issues with the Model 3 coming out, or his boring company, which is tunneling. He wants to tunnel under major cities.
Yeah, like LA and.
Yeah, and create these high-speed rails that don't deal with. I mean, to me, and I love the space exploration. I think the boring company could have a much bigger impact on our lives than space exploration will.
Yeah.
I mean, if he can figure out a way to bore these giant tunnels and get high-speed electric vehicles going through there. I mean, think about what your life would be like if you're able just to pop down into those things and go.
And especially in markets like LA, where traffic is just always brutal.
Phoenix, anywhere.
Yes.
If he makes it affordable.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, and then on the horizon as well, there's other companies like Bezos, Amazon, with their Blue Orbit. That should be get going anytime like 2019 or 2020.
Sure. And when you talk about these dreamers, and I'm not talking about the immigration dreamers now. These are people who have built these incredibly successful companies, have almost unlimited resources, especially in the case of Bezos there. Yeah, you wonder what they can do.
I know.
And they're not worried so much about having a huge hierarchy of people to deal with. Somebody like Bezos can basically say, hey, look, I want to do this. I've got, $40 billion.
Yes.
I'm going to do it.
Right.
Actually, he's the first cent-to-billionaire. He's got over $100 billion.
Yeah, wow.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want there when it comes to that. Now, do you think, Troy, that we'll ever see NASA back to its glory days of launching? Or do you think it's going to be really on the shoulders now of SpaceX or other companies like SpaceX?
I think the only thing that would ever see us go back to the way NASA was is if something totally unforeseen and catastrophic happened with these private companies. I don't see that happening.
Yes.
I don't see the government getting back into that business. As we've seen with many different industries, government is not the greatest at running certain things.
Yes.
Pretty good at regulating, pretty good at national defense and keeping us safe and making sure the roads are paved. But are they great at building rockets? Not necessarily.
Right.
So you go to these innovative companies, you let the top 2 or 3 fight it out and see who can do it the most streamlined economically and who can come up with the best technology, and then you go with that.
Yes.
That's what I think. I mean, we got a tremendous amount of use from our shuttle system. But I mean, by the time we were done launching it, it was like 30-something-year-old technology.
It really was. And I was watching I'm glad you brought up the shuttle, because I watched just yesterday a documentary on the space shuttle program. I couldn't believe it. $1 billion to $1.5 billion every time they launch. That's what it costs to get that up in the air.
That's crazy. I didn't know it was that much. I went to a launch. Actually, I tried to go. We went 3 times trying to go to the very first launch after the very last accident, and they had so many delays. I can't imagine how much it cost just getting up to that point and then offloading all that fuel and all the things they had to do to deal with that stuff. And and the shuttle was creaking by the end. It was creaking, and there were issues, and so. And you have to take your hat off to the men and women of the space program.
So did you ever get to see it launch, or was it what was that like?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I talk about it. They keep you about 3.5 miles away from the launch pad. So it's a very famous shot that if you've ever seen the shuttle, that clock that sits right next to the swamp there, and that's about 3.5 miles away, because if anything had happened, especially during the Apollo program, but I think also the shuttle program, if something blew up on the pad, it's like a low-yield nuclear weapon. That's how big the explosion would be. So they keep everybody back.
Oh, yeah.
Only the very most essential people go out there, like the astronauts and the crews getting them ready to get going. They keep you back. So As it goes up, it's kind of silent because it takes a second for the sound to get to you because it's 3 miles away. But once it does, it's not just a sound. It's like if you've ever been to a concert and you get next to a speaker and there's bass playing where you can feel the percussion of the bass. The percussion of that rocket taking off was so intense, it felt like a wind. It felt like my pant legs, I could feel them kind of like blowing against my legs, and there was no wind.
Wow.
It was just the sound, the bass of the rocket
amazing.
taking off. Yeah, and the things you don't realize is by the time the shuttle cleared the launch pad, just right there, it's already going 120 miles an hour. Think about that.
0 to 120 in like.
And something that big is shooting up.
Yeah.
That's something I'll never forget. And I think even as impressive as that launch was just really being there and talking to the astronauts who were part of the program and having access to them and talking to Gene Kranz, who was the flight mission controller in charge of the Apollo 13 mission. And he's still around, and he's talking about all the things that he remembered and all the close calls they had and things that people never even really knew.
Right.
Especially in the early days of space travel, they were flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah,
like literally.
That's amazing. That's
and when you go to, if you go there, if you ever go to Florida, they've just created an amazing shuttle exhibit there at Kennedy Space Center. And you walk in, you actually see the shuttle hanging above you or whatever. But they also have what they call the, I think it's the Garden of Rockets, or the Rocket Garden is what it's called. And you see the actual rockets that they were using during the early days.
Yeah.
Like the Mercury missions, the very, very early days. They basically stuck those guys in like something the size of smaller than a dumpster and strapped it on top of an ICBM that was used to shoot nuclear warheads. That's what they were riding in.
Wow.
And you can go see those and you're looking at that and going, oh my gosh, there was an astronaut on top of that little rocket shooting into orbit. Are you kidding me?
Right. In a small little window, wow.
Oh, and you think about just the cojones it took to climb into that thing.
Yeah, so not knowing if this thing was going to be a firework or it was going to get me up there.
Super interesting. I totally recommend it if you ever get to Florida, if you ever go out to Disney World or whatever. Take a day.
It's a good ride. Yeah.
Oh, it's just unbelievable.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, well, Troy, thank you so much
talking with you, Mike.
Yeah, that was good insight there, and have a great Easter weekend.
Thanks, buddy. You too.
All right, thank you.
See you guys.
More news now coming up next, everyone. All right.
13 minutes.
Steve, can you hear me good?
I can hear you.
Okay, we'll be right with you.
Mm-hmm.
And welcome back here to News Now. We do appreciate everybody joining us here on this Friday. We are now being joined on the phone by our very own Steve Kraft with an update on a breaking news situation out in Globe. So let me bring up Steve. Steve, you are live right now with us here on News Now.
What's going on, Iron Mike?
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Steve? So what's the update here that you have for us in Globe, Arizona?
Well, we just got into Globe and we just got our phone service back, so it's really fortunate that the timing worked out. We are headed towards High Desert Middle School, where there was a report that there were some students who had plans to make mischief at the school, and that's putting it mildly. There was some discussion about bringing weapons to school and homemade bombs. And the whole dispute here is that police have been made aware of this because a student let parents know yesterday, and the parents let the police know, and the police started looking into all this. And in the course of their investigation, the police found out that the school allegedly, to use a legal word, supposedly, knew about it a couple days ago but didn't tell the cops. And so some parents are very upset about that. And so at this point, we have reached out to the school district here in Globe to find out what their version of events is. And we're also reaching out to parents here in Globe to find out from them what they've been hearing and what their opinions are about the situation. And, of course, we'll be reaching out to the police in Globe as well. And we're heading up to this school right now, which is a little bit past Globe, in the high desert. That's why it's called High Desert Middle School. So we're not sure if the school itself is open. This is, of course, Good Friday. And Google is telling us that apparently the school may be closed. But we're going to head out that way. And certainly this is not a really huge town, so it shouldn't be that hard to hopefully find parents who want to talk to the folks at the school district. Their offices are open today, and we reached out to them. We talked to them. They've been very cordial. And then the police as well. The good news in all of this is that, so far as we can tell, there's been no actual threat to the school. That's good. The question here is really of notification, and did the district know and not tell the police a couple days ago about all of this?
All right. So, Steve Kraft, we'll see if you could get some more detailed information there for us. But thanks for giving us that status update right now here live on the phone for us right there on News Now as you get closer there to Globe. Steve, thanks so much.
You got it, Mike.
All right. Thank you. All right, folks, as we continue on here with News Now, we're going to take you now out to Sacramento, where we are getting some updates on the Stephon Clark investigation that is happening right now. We are learning from lawyers for Stephon Clark's family that they want an independent autopsy to be done to their loved one. So let's listen in now.
Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento Christian Center. We want to start out with prayer for the Clark family. I'm Pastor Les Simmons, assistant pastor here at South Sacramento.
At autopsy. And I will stop at that.
Okay, thank you. Hold on just a second. I want to have Mr. Gallipo say a minute, and then we're going to do some questions. We're not going to be here all day, so get your questions ready. Go ahead.
Very briefly, good morning, everyone. My name is Dale Gallipo. I specialize in police shooting cases. I'm honored to be part of this legal team. We obviously want to fight for justice for the family, and justice amounts to full compensation and responsibility in the civil rights arena, but also fair consideration of a criminal prosecution. I think the evidence you're seeing in terms of the forensics will be very important to that determination. And generally speaking, part of the outrage in the community is not only for this shooting, but it's for all police shootings that are happening of unarmed people, repeatedly people being shot unarmed and shot in the back. And one of the big questions we all have to address is, what do we need to do for these shootings to stop? That's what everyone wants. That's what the family wants. And we hope to make a difference in that regard. I think it could start with better training, with more accountability and more responsibility of these police officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. Yes, Doctor.
Dr. Mahler, had the officers not waited nearly 6 minutes to give him medical attention, do you think Stephon would still be here today?
Well, in the standard of practice of medicine, it is not allowed for anybody to determine the survivability of any injury. Even doctors don't do that. And typically, the standard we use is 5 minutes. So whether you're fatally wounded or not, you should receive immediate and timely medical and surgical intervention. A good example I use is that of Congresswoman Gifford. If you remember, she received a gunshot wound of the head. It should have been fatal. But because of a timely, immediate medical and surgical intervention, her survivability, the probability of her survivability was remarkably increased. So after each and every type of injury, every minute you wait decreases the probability of survival.
So his death wasn't instant, and had they given him medical attention right away?
Well, he answered.
I think he's answered. Obviously,
his death wasn't instantaneous, no.
But obviously, there's a lot more to be done to get to the answers. We're not jumping to any conclusions. We're dealing with facts right now.
You said he was down for 25 minutes, right? He didn't die instantly, but you said something about 25 minutes.
No. Why don't you just explain the time? I think what he was telling you generally is how long it takes when you have a similar wounds from bleeding to cause irreversible brain damage. Could you tell us?
Yes, in the practice of medicine, there are standard references we use. And people who suffer gunshot wounds, like he did, will die from 2 mechanisms: exsanguination, meaning bleeding, and acute respiratory arrest from tension pneumothorax. Now, the underlying final injuries to the brain takes about 3 to 5 minutes, 10 minutes to suffer irreversible damage. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Lilia?
Can you corroborate that the officers from the first shot to kill him?
We can't answer that question. That's subjective.
I mean,
There's no fit. That's not going to.
Was the first one lethal then?
Well,
the first shot?
that's a different question. I think the question is, if he had only been shot once, would that have been enough to cause a fatal? Hold on, let him answer that question.
Well, like I had said earlier, each and every one of the wounds independently possessed a fatal capacity. The lethality of each wound would be different. Some were more lethal than others, but each and every wound possessed a forensically significant fatal capacity. Did that answer your question?
Another question.
So 7 would be the first one, was that
No. Exactly. I think it's
he can
the
explain
opposite.
that one more time.
It contradicts the narrative that has been put forth by the police based on with the autopsy findings. She wants to know where was he facing.
Exactly where was he facing when the first shot struck him?
He was facing the house with his left to the officers. He was not facing the officers. After he was shot, the first one he turned around. Now, these are not my opinions. These are the prevailing scientific evidence as provided by the second autopsy.
Can you show us in what angle he was facing the house? Because if he was fully sideways, one would think he would hit his arm and not his rib cage.
Yes, he was slightly, his back was slightly facing the officers, left back to the side. So that would why you would have the entrance to the back of the side of the back. So during the entire interaction, he had his back towards the officers, not his front.
Dr. Muller, can you clarify
Last one.
the one shot that went into the front of his body? Can you clarify again how that happened?
It'll be shot number 8.
That was number 8 into the thigh. When I was doing the autopsy, because I would dissect the pathway of the bullet, I did that. It was not done during the first autopsy. And I actually took pictures. And the first thing I noticed was that it exhibited a very acute trajectory of less than 45 degrees. So given the human anatomy, the anatomic configurations of the body, it was less likely he sustained such a wound while he was standing erect. So he was falling maybe on the ground or closer to the ground. And then when I watched the videographic documentation, you would actually notice, you will see his left thigh lift up while he was on the ground. So more likely than not, he received gunshot wound number 8 after he had fallen. However, gunshot wound number 8 is of no significant forensic fatal capacity, because no vital tissue or blood vessel was disrupted. But does this possess some degree of fetal capacity? Yes, of course. It could get infected. I've seen people with all types of gunshot wounds. It may not kill you immediately, but will kill you 2 or 3 weeks later.
What? Yes. Not yet. Last one.
No.
No. We're waiting for that.
No, and that should take some time.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us how the findings from your autopsy differ specifically from the narrative that the police have given to all of us?
Well, it's very simple. The narrative that had been put forth was that they had to open fire because he was charging at them. Well, obviously, based on Dr. Malu's findings and the family's autopsy, it suggests all the bullets were from behind. And so we thank you.
Explain the difference between this autopsy and potentially others that you've seen, other bodies that were subject of police shooting. Are there any significant differences?
Well, you would notice we human beings may want to believe we are all different. No, we're not. So this is not different from the thousands of autopsies I've performed. They're the same generally accepted principles of medicine and the same standards of practice of medicine. Did that answer your question?
Specifically, somebody who has been shot by police?
Yes, I've done many, not just gunshot wounds, other modalities of death. This again is routine. There is nothing exceptional about this case. The truth of the facts are actually very simple.
All right, so, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let me
That's up to them.
conclude. Okay. I will say this. Dr. Malu has put forth his his diagram that's going to be made public to you all. Obviously, everybody knows Dr. Malu all over the world for his important work with CTEs and the concussion cases in professional football. When he put forth those theories, people attacked him for that. Over time, truth won out. We anticipate they may try to attack him in this autopsy. But we believe over time, just like with the NFL, truth will win out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome back, everybody, to News Now, taking just a great look at downtown Phoenix on this Friday. And joining me now is our very own, hey, it's Celeste Rodriguez.
Hey, good morning.
Good
How
morning.
are you?
Happy Easter weekend, too.
Yeah, happy Easter weekend. Happy Good Friday.
I know, yes. It is Good Friday here.
Yeah.
And you have such a great story here today. That's one of the great reasons we love to have you guys on in the morning, because you get to meet some interesting people.
Yeah, we have such a really unique mix of hard news and, of course, some of the lighter stories in our community. And we have one story about a wrestler, Pedro Medina, and he is a wrestler at Horizon. He was state champ, which is really cool.
That's
He's a
amazing.
state champ.
That's
so he
amazing.
came in studio this morning, and what he shared about his story was that he started, he lived like south of downtown Phoenix, grew up in not so great area, and his older brother said, you know, you have something really special about you. And he said, come live with me, and I'm going to give you rules. I'm going to give you like a meal every night. I'm going to give you a roof over your head. He was kind of going through some hard times. And he said, and you're going to wrestle.
Nice.
And then he said it was really difficult at first for the first several years. But he said it taught him a lot about character, showing up every day, working out, you know?
Yeah.
And so now he's headed to nationals. And he's looking for some help.
There you go.
Yes.
And don't you love those diamond in the rough stories?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when people are met with adversity and then they can come out of that, that just really shows you. And then they have boosted confidence, because you go from one level and then you try to get to another level and you could do it, and then it's amazing.
And not just that, but you get to that point, as you mentioned, Mike, and then you're able to kind of pass it forward, you know, move it forward and kind of pass it along. And he actually coaches young kids. And his little sister, I think she's like 8. She's actually wrestles now. She is a sweetheart. And she hurt her arm, and so she had a cast on when they came in studio, and she came in with him as well. So he came in studio along with his brother, who took him in, his little sister, who also wrestles, and his coach from Horizon.
Wow.
Yeah, so they shared part of their story, and it really was amazing. So he's looking for some financial help now to try to get to nationals. It's in Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay.
And he'll face off with all these wonderful wrestlers and really talented athletes from all over the country. And he really is a special guy.
And he just needs a boost to get there.
Yeah.
And so he could show what Arizona's all made of, right?
That's right.
Yeah. All right, so let's show everybody the meeting that you guys had today on
let's
AZ
do
AM.
it.
All right.
Well, new this morning, a heartwarming story of a high school wrestler overcoming the odds here in the Valley. A lot of hard work and dedication. As you know, he's now a state champion wrestler and off to the Nationals, but he needs some help here this morning.
Very interesting backstory, too. Look at these moves. Wrestling is tough, right?
Yeah,
You've gotta be. So we've got Pedro Medina, Mago, his brother, and Coach Chris Haas, and your sister. What's your name, sweetheart? Zariah. Good to see you.
And she's a wrestler, too. Can you believe it?
I know.
You're amazing.
Yes. So it's an interesting story. Tell me a little bit about your background.
I don't come from the best background. I was.
No, it's tough, right? So you ended up living with your brother,
I'm a little emotional.
No, it's okay.
I started wrestling around 7th grade, and my brother, he really took me under his arm. He introduced me to wrestling. I don't think I would have ever been into that sport if it weren't for my brother. Thank God for my brother. And then after I started to get into wrestling, I started to learn more and more about how to be as a person, morally, mentally, physically. Yeah. And I noticed the details matter. The smallest details matter, from whether you're out in public, whether you're in your house and you see a piece of trash on the floor, you pick it up, to doing bleachers after practice, even though practice is over. It all matters.
Yeah, kind of character development and integrity and living with your brother. Tell me, what was that like for you to kind of beat the odds and make these huge jumps, when you think about, you're state champ now.
Yes, I felt a lot of odds were against me, but I still overcame it. I'm not the one to really take the easy way out. I like to push myself to new limits, and yeah, now I'm a state champ.
Big deal. Yeah.
And you took over as his guardian.
I did, yeah. And so, I saw him going in a direction that I felt was not necessarily the most efficient for him. He wasn't really maximizing on his opportunities. Yeah. Which was a route I almost went, right? And I had a couple mentors kind of help me in wrestling, also my coach as well. And I decided to take him under my wing and teach him everything I know. And I was very strict with him and very hard. It was, he almost didn't like me at first.
Yeah.
But I'm sure now he fully appreciates it. And now there isn't really much I have to tell him, right? He's his own man now.
Coach, you've got to be proud too.
Oh, I'm so proud of this kid. Like when I said, when he didn't have much guidance when he showed up, not much discipline, and you can always rely on Pedro to show up on time and put in the work, and he was our most valuable wrestler on the team, always a great leader and a great role model, and it wasn't like that when it first started. I mean, it happened over time, and I couldn't be more proud of this kid.
And so,
you,
I know,
Pedro.
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so now you're headed to Nationals. Tell us kind of like what's ahead, what's coming next?
What's ahead is now I'm getting college offers. I haven't committed to any yet. Nationals as well. I want to go to Fargo. It's over the summer. And
where's Nationals?
I believe in North Dakota.
Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, Fargo.
Yeah.
Yes. Good. And you'll be competing against the best wrestlers in the state or the country at that point.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. And so you need some help getting there, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Is it there's a Facebook page set up, or?
Yeah, there's a GoFundMe account. It's
It's called Vote for Pedro.
Yeah.
The Vote for Pedro Fund.
Yes.
It's going to help fund travel expenses, and anything else left over will help go to his college, transitioning into college.
Wonderful.
So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we love success stories.
We do,
and this is a great one.
Congratulations to you. This is a big deal for you and your family, and much success on the way.
Way to work, buddy.
Thank you.
I tell you what,
Nice to
athletics
meet
can save some lives, that's for sure, right? And the discipline that goes with it.
And
So
you're
good.
such a great role model for your sister.
I
Because you're a
try to be.
wrestler too. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that how you hurt your arm?
He coaches her.
Oh, you coach her.
On a
Sweet.
club. I do a little coaching at a club.
Oh, good.
Good for you.
Giving back there, too.
North Phoenix.
Good meeting all of you, and good luck.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Stay in touch. I want to know how you do in Nashville.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks for coming on. All right. All eyes on these.
That was great.
What a sweetheart he is, right?
Yeah, that is
Pedro.
an amazing little story right
Yeah,
there.
and at the very end, you like how he said, "Thank you, sir."
Yeah,
Like
right.
any young man who says "sir" or "ma'am," you're like, Oh my gosh, you're doing amazing.
Yes.
Like, you were amazing.
Absolutely.
So can we go ahead and show folks
Yes,
this?
let's show everybody
We
right
pulled
here.
up the GoFundMe page for you, and you can see he's looking to raise $8,000. And so if you go to GoFundMe on their website, GoFundMe.com, just search Vote for Pedro Fund. I even did just Vote for Pedro. And then I was able to find this page, and you can help him out. So at the bottom, he kind of gives his information, is a little bit of his background. And what they're saying is that he needs most of the money to travel to Fargo, to stay there, to fund his whole trip for nationals. But also, whatever's left over, he says, is going to help him for college. He's already has some scholarship opportunities. He's meeting with colleges. And we're talking about, like, I think it's D1 schools.
That's awesome.
It's one of those rags to riches story in terms of, like, him being able to make it big and make a name for himself. And what he really says, though, is that he really loves the whole idea that, and his coach, you just heard his coach there, saying that he has integrity, and it's really helped. And he actually, Pedro said, it's helped me build character, and that's where you feel for him.
Yeah,
and
you
you
really
say, this is amazing. It's an amazing story.
No, yeah, and just going through, like we were talking about earlier, the adversity and getting through a moment that might be a little bit tough in your life, and if you could overcome that, and then really the sky's the limit then.
Absolutely. And what he does next, I think, is going to be really fun to watch.
Yes.
When you see someone do so much at such a level like his high school, right? And you think, wow, you're getting calls from D1 schools, you know, and you've come from pretty much nothing here in Phoenix, Arizona, in a not so good neighborhood, right? You weren't given all the perks and everything that maybe some other kids were given, you know, extra money for private coaching and things like that. He didn't have that. He had to work extra hard on his own. And so, you know, and then you wait to see great things are going to come from him.
Oh, definitely,
it's
definitely.
Gonna be, his potential is, he's definitely got great potential.
Oh yeah,
for
and
sure.
I always say never bet against the diamond in the rough, because what happens when you start polishing that puppy? Oh, it shines.
Shines bright.
It does.
Right?
So that's going to be exciting to watch, and hopefully he's able to get the funds that he needs to go out and shine.
Yeah, so if you guys can, you head over to the GoFundMe page. There's another look at it right there. Of course, he's at Horizon High School in Scottsdale now, and his brother, who you just saw him in that interview with, he kind of took him in under his wing, and he said, you're going to have rules here. You're going to have to go to bed at a certain time.
Right.
You're going to be studying hard. You're going to do something good. But he said, you know, this is something that he really wants. It's something that he loves. He loves to wrestle.
That's amazing.
Cool.
So hopefully others can help him continue that dream on there.
Absolutely. Are your grandma and grandpa still watching?
Oh yeah, they are watching.
I want to say hi to them.
All right, there we go. Grandma, Grandpa in Sedona. Yes.
Yes. It's been a while since I've been on with you, Mike. I wanted to make sure I given them a little love.
They are watching. They
love
watching. Yeah.
So everybody go out and check out Pedro's GoFundMe page. And I believe his coach actually set it up. He did not.
Nice. Well, that's
And
good.
I think the community really, and they just launched it. So $8,000 is what they're looking to raise. And we across the world, we can do it.
We can do it.
Right?
Everybody just pinch in just a little, or
every little
as much
bit.
as you can, right?
Yeah,
there you
any
go.
little bit counts.
Awesome. All right, Celeste, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
that
for
was a great
having
story.
me.
Sure. You know, so many times there's sad, bad stories on the news. It's great to have
We've had them this week, that's
shining
for sure.
moments.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Thanks so much, Celeste. All right, more news now, everybody. Coming up next. Hey, and welcome back, everybody, to News Now. Taking a look at your 10-day forecast. Expecting sunny skies today and 87 degrees, and then we warm up just a little bit more tomorrow for 90 degrees, but a little bit cloudy. And then your Easter Sunday forecast, 89 degrees, and then looks like it's going to be the same for the next week there. So a great weekend on tap. Hopefully everybody has a lot of plans and fun things to do with your kids and fun relatives as well for this Easter weekend. Hi, everybody. Mike Page here, continuing on with the News Now. Hope everybody's having a great Friday as we get you caught up on all the top stories here of the day. I do want to take you now back out to Sacramento because we just caught the tail end of that a little bit ago, the tail end of a news conference by Stephon Clark's attorneys. Family hired a round of attorneys, and Stephon Clark, if you don't know the story there, that's the individual there in Sacramento who was shot and killed by police. There is an investigation ongoing, and the attorneys now want a private investigation to be done for an autopsy. So let's listen into a little bit more of that.
As a lawyer, I'm honored to be here working with two of the greatest civil rights lawyers in America, Benjamin Crump and Dale Gallipo. Their success and the change that they've made is incomprehensible, the great things that these men have done, and we hope today to work together in this case to conduct a complete and thorough investigation. And as lawyers that go to court and try cases are decided on the facts. And what we're digging into are the facts and the evidence in this case, and we want to get away from rhetoric and talk and get to the facts and get a full and complete determination of what happened and why it happened. And as the first step in that process, some evidence that we had the ability to have access to Stephon Clark's body. We wanted to have our own independent autopsy. We have not received anything yet from the county coroner. We looked around, and Dale had known, and we had all known of Dr. Bennett Amalu. His tremendous reputation, done over 8,000 autopsies, over 4,000 autopsies with gunshot wounds, was trained in Allegheny County under world-renowned forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht, has been the pathologist in San Joaquin County, has 5, not 1, but 5 board certifications in different phases of pathology, degrees in epidemiology, medicine, public health, and really the man that uncovered, despite people questioning him, the whole CTE issue with concussions. You may remember him. He thinks he's better looking than Will Smith, but it's still up for debate, doctor. But anyway, it's really about today. The only message today is, what are the facts? What does the evidence show about the shooting? How many shots struck him? Where did they strike him? How did he die? And I want to bring up here Dr. Amalu, and what we're going to do is he's going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit more, take some questions, but we really want to stay focused on this Good Friday on the one issue that we're here to address, the narrative that's been placed out of what Stephon had been doing and what does the physical evidence show. So as part of Dr. Amalu's work, he has prepared, and we'll provide this to everyone, illustration of the wounds that he found during his extensive autopsy, and we're going to show those now. And if we could turn those around. And I want to have Dr. Amalu come up here. Both of these are the same. And doctor, if you could come up here and you could just share with us, and I'm going to maybe move this over closer. And if you could tell us.
Why don't you have the doctor get here, you get there, Brian.
I'm going to give you room, I don't want to block you out here.
But why don't you stay at the microphone?
Yeah, everyone's going to need to hear him, so. Can you do it from there?
Yes, exactly.
All right. We have to.
All right. Good afternoon or good morning.
And I always remind him to talk slowly. He gets wound, so let's take it slow.
Yes, I'll talk slowly. I'm Bennett Amalu, Dr. Amalu. I'm a forensic pathologist and neuropathologist. I was retained by the attorneys that represent the family to perform a second autopsy. I began the autopsy on March the 27th at approximately 10:58 a.m. in the morning, and my assistant, Michelle Hernandez, assisted me. The autopsy took us about 3 hours, and essentially, at the second autopsy, there were a total of 8 gunshot wounds. A total of 8 gunshot wounds, meaning that he was hit by 8 bullets. Stephon Clark received 8 bullets. 6 of the bullets, like you could see in the body diagram, exhibited gunshot wounds of entrance in the back, meaning he was shot in the back 6 times. The 7th gunshot wound was slightly to the side of his body, but to the back of the side of his body. So you could reasonably conclude that he received 7 gunshot wounds from his back. He was shot from the back. The first bullet, sorry, not really the first bullet, the first gunshot wound was to the neck. The numbers do not indicate the sequence. The numbering is simply for representational purposes. But the gunshot wound of entrance of the neck came from the right back of the neck. It exited from the left side and back of the neck. Gunshot wounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 were clustered around his right back and his right shoulder. The trajectories of all these wounds were forward and leftward. And each one of these bullets independently possessed a fatal capacity, meaning that out of all the 7, all he needed to have died was just one of the 7. Again, they exhibited a forward, leftward trajectory. Gunshot wound number 2 traveled into the right arm and caused what we call a comminuted fracture, meaning the bone of the right arm was fragmented into tiny bits, and it completely lacerated and destroyed all the major vessels of the arm. Gunshot wound number 3 passed in a forward trajectory very close to the spinal cord and caused a focal spinal cord injury with bleeding in and around the spinal cord. Gunshot wounds number 4 and 5 perforated the chest cavity, perforated the lungs, and initiated what we call, pardon the jargon, a tension pneumothorax and massive bleeding. Gunshot wound number 6 perforated and fractured the vertebrae and also caused a focal spinal cord injury. Gunshot wound number 7, the only gunshot wound to the left, again perforated the chest cavity at about the 5th rib level and perforated the lungs. Upon opening up his body, he received injuries to his aorta, the biggest vessel in the body, and he bled massively. So the mechanisms of injury would be exsanguination or bleeding and tension pneumothorax, because the human chest cavity is at negative pressure of about -4 millimeter mercury, while the atmospheric pressure is at about 760 millimeter mercury. So whenever you have a gunshot that penetrates your chest wall, disrupts the integrity of the chest wall, you have a one-way valve mechanism. Air gushes in but doesn't go out and balances the atmospheric pressure. So during the second autopsy, his lungs were collapsed. The technical jargon for that is atelectasis. Now, gunshot wound number 8 was the only gunshot wound located in the front of the body. It was located, like you could see, in the lower anterior thigh on the left side. It exhibited a very acute angled trajectory. So what that would indicate are the forensic significance of such an acute trajectory would be that he was shot in his left thigh. He received a gunshot wound of his left thigh when he was either on the ground or falling close to the ground. Now, given the totality of the configurations of the trauma noted at the second autopsy, death was not instantaneous. Death mechanism by exsanguination and an acute respiratory arrest would cause hypoxic ischemic injury of the brain. It takes the brain about 3 to 5 minutes or 3 to 10 minutes to suffer irreversible damage. So death took about 3 to 10 minutes. It was not an instantaneous death. Now, the autopsy established the prevailing scientific evidence. I completed the autopsy. The autopsy report was ready the next day, Wednesday the 28th. I saw the video of the helicopter just yesterday. And the autopsy findings, as confirmed, would be consistent with the videographic documentation of the terminal forensic scenario. I could expand on that.
Could you explain your opinion as to which gunshot wound was first, and in whatever sequence you can give them? And I know you said that the numbers don't indicate sequentially how they occurred, but could you explain that for us?
Okay. In forensic pathology, there is a process we call clinical pathologic correlation, and I repeat it, CPC for short, clinical pathologic correlation. The autopsy findings must be independent of any suggested proposition. When I was doing the autopsy, I was not aware of any proposition whatsoever. So when I documented and confirmed the prevailing the prevailing autopsy evidence, I now correlated it with the videographic documentation of the terminal forensic scenario. So you would see in the video, if I may step aside slightly, the police officers were to the side of the house, and he was behind the house with his left side facing the officers. So the first shot he received would be number 7 to the left side and back of his chest, and the proportion of the bullet and the injuries caused made him shove him around, and he turned around, and his back was facing the officers. If you see the video, he was shot first, he turned around, projected in, and immediately he received a cluster of subsequent bullets, which immediately dropped him. And then you could see in the video, his left thigh actually went up. That was when he received gunshot wound number 8. So, the proposition that has been presented that he was assailing the officers meaning he was facing the officers, is inconsistent with the prevailing forensic evidence as documented at autopsy. And I will stop at that.
Okay, thank you. Hold on just a second. I want to have Mr. Gallipo say a minute, and then we're going to do some questions. We're not going to be here all day, so get your questions ready. Go ahead.
Very briefly, good morning, everyone. My name is Dale Gallipo. I specialize in police shooting cases. I'm honored to be part of this legal team. We obviously want to fight for justice for the family, and justice amounts to full compensation and responsibility in the civil rights arena, but also fair consideration of a criminal prosecution. I think the evidence you're seeing in terms of the forensics will be very important to that determination. And generally speaking, part of the outrage in the community is not only for this shooting, but it's for all police shootings that are happening of unarmed people, repeatedly people being shot unarmed and shot in the back. And one of the big questions we all have to address is, what do we need to do for these shootings to stop? That's what everyone wants. That's what the family wants. And we hope to make a difference in that regard. I think it could start with better training, with more accountability and more responsibility of these police officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. Yes, Doctor.
Dr. Mahler, had the officers not waited nearly 6 minutes to give him medical attention, do you think Stephon would still be here today?
Well, in the standard of practice of medicine, it is not allowed for anybody to determine the survivability of any injury. Even doctors don't do that. And typically, the standard we use is 5 minutes. So whether you're fatally wounded or not, you should receive immediate and timely medical and surgical intervention. A good example I use is that of Congresswoman Gifford. If you remember, she received a gunshot wound of the head. It should have been fatal. But because of a timely, immediate medical and surgical intervention, her survivability, the probability of her survivability was remarkably increased. So after each and every type of injury, every minute you wait decreases the probability of survival.
So his death wasn't instant, and had they given him medical attention right away?
Well, he answered.
I think he's answered. Obviously,
his death wasn't instantaneous, no.
But obviously, there's a lot more to be done to get to the answers. We're not jumping to any conclusions. We're dealing with facts right now.
You said he was down for 25 minutes, right? He didn't die instantly, but you said something about 25 minutes.
No. Why don't you just explain the time? I think what he was telling you generally is how long it takes when you have a similar wounds from bleeding to cause irreversible brain damage. Could you tell us?
Yes, in the practice of medicine, there are standard references we use. And people who suffer gunshot wounds, like he did, will die from 2 mechanisms: exsanguination, meaning bleeding, and acute respiratory arrest from tension pneumothorax. Now, the underlying final injuries to the brain takes about 3 to 5 minutes, 10 minutes to suffer irreversible damage. Did that answer your question?
Lilia?
Can you corroborate that the officers from the first shot to kill him?
We can't answer that question. That's subjective.
From the first
I don't. There's no fit. That's not going to.
Was the first one lethal then?
Well,
the first shot?
that's a different question. I think the question is, if he had only been shot once, would that have been enough to cause a fatal?
Hold on.
Hold on. Let him answer that question.
Well, like I had said earlier, each and every one of the wounds independently possessed a fatal capacity. The lethality of each wound would be different. Some were more lethal than others, but each and every wound possessed a forensically significant fatal capacity. Did that answer your question?
Another question. Quick.
Would be the first one, was that lethal? Excuse me, from the autopsy, does it mean that he was actually facing the officers when he was
No. Exactly. I think it's
he can
the
explain
opposite.
that one more time.
It contradicts the narrative that has been put forth by the police based on with the autopsy findings. She wants to know where was he facing.
Exactly where was he facing when the first shot struck him?
He was facing the house with his left to the officers. He was not facing the officers. After he was shot, the first one he turned around. Now, these are not my opinions. These are the prevailing scientific evidence as provided by the second autopsy.
Can you show us in what angle he was facing the house? Because if he was fully sideways, one would think he would hit his arm and not his rib cage.
Yes, he was slightly, his back was slightly facing the officers, left back to the side. So that would why you would have the entrance to the back of the side of the back.
And welcome back, everybody, to News and Now. Taking a look at your final look at this 10-day Foxcast. We're expecting about 87 degrees today, and Easter Sunday about 89 with partly sunny skies. Hi, everybody. Mike Pace here, continuing on with News Now. Well, we just have one more story here for you, and we got to end on a good note. There's been such sad and bad news during the week. We're going to end with a happy one. Here's our very own Corey McCloskey having fun on a little Easter egg hunt.
I know.
Right there.
The floor is jammed with eggs. It is, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it's carpeted with eggs, and it's one of their most enjoyable events of the whole year. Peyton Diddle is with us, and we've got some kids already waiting, already lined up out there, and this is a pretty nice array of options. Many egg hunts are kind of sparse. Yeah. You really got to search. You're up in trees, you're down rabbit holes and all. You're making it easy on these guys.
Yeah, filled about 4,000 eggs this year. Gets better every year. The kids seem to love it. We love getting it ready for them. So that's what we have going on today. But we also are open on Easter, so we'll have some fun things that day as well.
Oh, fun. Now, today's egg hunts, you've got them in, I think, 3 categories, right? Yeah. And it's free? Kids can just come in?
Yeah, it's free. We also have one jumping area open if you're waiting, so that's free as well. We open to the public at 9, but this is completely good to go. Walk in, you're ready to get going.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to open this one here. I've got a good feeling about this. I'm usually pretty lucky with eggs. Oh, sweet tarts are one of my favorites. What are some of the other options that we've got in here?
We're giving away a couple passes, so we have free hours, some money off different hours. $10. We're also going to be having buy one, bring a friend in, and then also tons of candy, obviously, for the kiddos.
Very good. And what are the age categories?
So we have 0 to 4, and then 8 to 10, and then 10 to 12. But those are kind of lenient. Say we have a 13-year-old with a little one. They can totally come in and help out. We have parents helping out. But yeah, it's great fun for everyone.
Excelente. Well, it's AZ Airtime, easy to find. I'm looking for kids who are pretty good at picking up eggs. Really? How'd you get in front of the barrier here?
I have no idea. I'm in front of here because I want to be world famous, because I know this is a camera. I'm not dumb anyway, and I want to be on the news. So can you please interview me?
Well, we'll see. Is your mom here? Did you drive yourself?
No, I did not drive.
Did you hitchhike?
I have no idea what that means.
Good. That's good.
She's my mom's the person that drove me here. She's the person looking after me right now.
Oh, really?
And this is my friend, Brinley.
Oh, Brinley seems a little more retiring. You know, come over here, Brinley. What's your friend's name?
Lauren O'Day.
Yeah.
Lauren,
hold on. Now Brinley's talking now, Lauren. How would you describe Lauren to people who've never met her before?
Crazy.
Yes, we got that part.
Well,
Oh, there we go. There's some little kid trying to get a lot of FaceTime, and there, no doubt, with our very own Corey McCloskey. Well, that's going to do it for us today on Fox 10 Extra. Wishing everybody a great Easter, and we're going to see you guys back here on Monday. Take care, everybody. All right, everybody, so we will do some stream maintenance right now and be back with you in a little bit.